I believe we're picking up on, make sure I've got the right class, on page 671. Bottom of the page, we had just left off the other day with Faramir, not Aragorn and Legolas, Sam and Frodo, talking about Isildur's bane. And Faramir says at the bottom of the page, 671, but fear no more, I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway, not where Minas Tirith is falling in ruin, and I alone could save her. So, that is thus, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory, I do not wish for such triumphs. Okay? Frodo talks a little bit about the Council of Elrond and such, and they keep making their way. They're not yet at the window on the west, right? They've stopped for a minute. Got to get my names right. Faramir has kind of pushed the other men aside, and they finally do make to their way, and it's a cave behind, a waterfall and such. 680, 681, just real quickly. Describe Faramir's demeanor. How does he come across? Does he come across like Boromir did? No. Why? I mean, several of you either said no or heads did this. So what's the difference? Compare and contrast.
He thinks more.
Okay. Who does Frodo kind of compare Faramir to? Who does he suggest Faramir is more like? Gandalf. He says, you're more like Gandalf than you are like your brother. Okay? After they've had some rest, after they've had some food, Faramir is again talking with Frodo and Sam. And they're on page 680, they're talking about Lothlorien. Okay? And Faramir says, then she must be lovely indeed, perilously fair. Sam, I don't know about perilous. Now notice that. Aragorn said, oh yeah, she's perilous already. The whole realm is perilous, okay? Sam, I don't know about perilous. It strikes me that folk takes their peril with them into Lorien, which is exactly what, not literally, but it's exactly what Aragorn said. And finds it there because they brought it. Perhaps you could call her perilous because she's so strong in herself. You could dash yourself to pieces, etc. Now and he catches himself. Okay? Yes, now Boromir, you would say. He took his peril with him. Yes, sir, begging your pardon. Fine man as your brother was. You've been warm on the scent all along. Okay? What does Sam do? Like in less than 30 seconds.
Essentially says that Boromir was not as high and mighty as everyone seems to think.
He brought her with him.
Yes and no, yes. I mean, what does Sam literally say? He mentions the ring. He blurts out the enemy's ring. From the moment he first saw it, which was when? Council of Elrond. He wanted the enemy's ring. Frodo's like, Sam, ixnay on the Ingray, And Sam says, now look here, sir, don't you go taking advantage of my master because the servant's no better than a fool. Okay? Faramir put them at their ease. And I'm not saying Faramir was manipulating. He wasn't. He was putting them at their ease. Why? Because he realized they've been through a long journey. They've had their ups and downs. These guys need some R&R. All right? So, Sam finishes. Handsome is as handsome does. Isn't that what Forrest Gump says? Stupid is as stupid does, essentially. Handsome is as handsome does. Prove your worth. Show us by your actions. Okay? Now's a chance to show your quality. And in the film, what does Peter Jackson do with Faramir's quality? You're smirking.
I've never seen
Okay. He changes Faramir's character 180 degrees. Totally changes it. He makes Faramir into a little Boromir. A Boromirlet, if you want. Okay? He has Faramir take Frodo and Sam from here to Osgiliath, planning to take them to Minas Tirith so that this thing can be a gift for his father. All right? Totally changes the character. Faramir. So that's the answer to the riddles. Notice, he knows what the enemy's ring is. The one ring that was thought to have perished. And Boromir tried to take it by force. Did Frodo say that? Did Sam say that? No, he didn't. Faramir knows his brother. Okay? And you escaped, and you ran all the way to me. Okay? And a host of men at my call and the ring of rings, a pretty stroke of fortune, a chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his strength. Ha! What's the ha mean? I've got it now. I can be the victor, you know. And he stands up, tall and stern, his eyes glinting. There's that word again. Right? Again, there's one time where it's not used negatively. And that's with Tom Bombadil. Okay? Frodo and Sam sprang from their stool, set themselves side by side with their backs to the wall. They each have their little swords out. Their swords are like daggers. They're like this long. Frodo, sticking his arm out, his arm would be, not even the length of my forearm. With his little sword would stick out about this far. Faramir's arm is at least that long. If he has a sword, he can stand 6 feet away. Frodo couldn't do anything. But Faramir sat down in his chair again and said, Alas for Boromir, it was too sore a trial. How you have increased my sorrow, you two strange wanderers from a far country, bearing the peril of men. But you are less judges of men than I of halflings. In other words, you are a poor judge of character. Why? We are truth speakers, we men of Gondor. Did Boromir ever say, ever promise, ever issue an oath, I will never take the ring? No, he didn't. If we take Faramir's words seriously, he seems to be implying if Boromir had said that, he would not have tried to take the ring. Okay? If we take him seriously. We boast seldom and then perform or die in the attempt. That is another idea that is straight out of that Old English poem that I mentioned before, The Wanderer. Those lines that Aragorn sings as they're making the way to the Golden Hall of Edoras, and they go by the funeral barrow, and he sings these lines, where have the riders gone, where are the horses, where are the men, where are the blah, 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 the Ubi Sut motif that comes from this. This idea about not boasting, okay, how does he put it again? We boast seldom and then perform. In other words, if we do boast, we're going to achieve what it is we boasted of, or die in the process, or die trying. So, we don't boast, but when we do, watch out. Okay? There's a big long passage in The Wanderer that is all about don't boast until you know what your heart is going to do in that situation. Okay? Not if I found it on the highway would I take it, I said. Now, you can kind of take that to be a boast. So, he's going to essentially die holding up those words. even if I were such a man as to desire this thing, and even though I knew not clearly what this thing was when I spoke. Why? Because that's usually the case when people make a boast. Look at, I don't care what your politics, look at every presidential candidate for at least the last 100 years. What does every presidential candidate, let's say somebody who's running for their party nomination first, and then they win that, and then they run for the, presidential nomination. What does everyone do?
Promises they can't keep.
They make promises they can't keep. They know they can't keep them. Or, once they get into office, what does the president say? It's a lot worse than I thought it was. Okay? It's a boast. It's not intended to be fulfilled. We could really learn a lot if we go back to a kind of an Anglo-Saxon, honor mentality in one sense. So, and even if I didn't know what this thing was when I made the boast, he says, still I should take those words as a vow and be held by them. He says, but I'm not that kind of man. That is, the kind of man who would make a wild boast without knowing all the facts. Or I am wise enough, so here's the other option, to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. Or, as Gandalf put it in Shadow of the Past, there is such a thing as too much power. Again, that is an idea that in our world, and I don't mean our world, the United States only, I mean our world. Whether here, the UK, Russia, pick your country. That is an idea that is foreign to politics. That you can have too much power. It's not foreign to those who are not in power, right? Because they think if I had the power, then I could get rid of those in power, and then I could make the world a better place. A better place according to what? According to my personal beliefs, which means you, and you. Gone. Why? I don't like the looks of you. I mean, historically, that's kind of what happens. So, sit at peace, be comforted, Samwise. If you seem to have stumbled, think that it was fated to be so. The whole reason I put up the other day on the board, the Boethius and all that kind of stuff, okay, he's thinking fate. He's not thinking what Elrond and Gandalf say. Notice he doesn't say, it was fated as it might seem. Because when they bring in fortune, chance, or fate, they always undercut it with that as it might seem. Okay? I think Faramir is kind of a believer in fate. All right? Your heart is shrewd as well as faithful. It was safe to declare this to me. It may even help the master you love. Okay? So, now we're going to skip a bunch. They know about Smeagol, Gollum. They use Frodo to trick Gollum. Okay? So that Gollum can be captured. Remember what Faramir said about what he would not even do to an orc? What did he say? He wouldn't even lie to an orc. Here's Frodo lying to Gollum. Okay? Why? Why do they need to capture Gollum?
Because he's playing around in a pool that he's not allowed to be in.
Because it is death to come to this pool. Even though he's, maybe ignorant of the law. Doesn't matter. Okay? Why else? What does Faramir need / want to do to / with Gollum? Louder?
Take him to be questioned.
He wants to question him. He wants to figure out, is he on the up and up? Okay? So they get Gollum, and Faramir says, bottom of 689. There are locked doors and closed windows in your mind, and dark rooms behind them. But in this I judge that you speak the truth. Okay? He's asked Gollum what? Do you know where you are right now? Gollum's like, nope. Don't know what it's called. Don't want to know what it's called. Never going to come back. And he says, you're telling the truth about this. Right? That's good. What oath will you swear never to return? And Gollum says, Master knows, I'll do that. Are you okay with that, Frodo? He says, yes, I am. Okay. Gollum then tells them the way they're going to go. That is, how they're going to enter Mordor. Okay. 691. And he and Frodo then talk about that, and he goes, do you know anything? And Frodo's like, I don't know anything about it. Okay. Do you know the name of that high pass? That is, there's a winding staircase that goes up to this pass that you go through the pass to get into Mordor. Do you know the name of that? Frodo. No. This is middle of 691. It is called Cirith Ungol. Gollum, hisses just at hearing the name. Is not that its name?
No, yes, we heard the name once. What does the name matter to us? Master says he must get in, so we must try. There's no other way.
No other way? How do you know that? Okay. So, Faramir, this is not a wise choice. 1, to follow Gollum. 2, to take this pathway. Okay? This path into it. Gollum, Frodo says, bottom of 691, Gollum isn't altogether wicked. He goes, no, not entirely, but malice eats it like a canker, and the evil is growing. What is malice?
Enjoyment of suffering.
Yeah. It's you want to inflict pain on somebody else. It's not anger, and it's not just unadulterated evil. It is evil directed at somebody or something. Okay? So, Frodo says, I've got to follow Gollum. He goes, okay. Faramir's like, you can leave Gollum. We can give him safe passage. He's not going to take it. Wherever I am, he's going to be. 692. Don't go to Cirith Ungol, Faramir says. Frodo, where then shall I go? Back to the Black Gate, deliver myself up to the guard? What do you know against this place that makes its name so dreadful? Nothing certain. Okay, so if it's not certain, then what does he know about this place?
He's probably heard rumors about it.
Rumors, tales, stories, legends. All those things from the misty, past. Okay? So, Chapter 7, Journey to the Crossroads. Frodo, Gollum, and Sam leave, and they make their way to the Crossroads, page 702. We're going to get a bit away into Return of the King today. I don't know how much a bit, but we are going to get 702. So they make their way to a crossroads. Looks like this. Mordor's over here. The mountain range is here. You follow this road all the way over here, and you have the sea. Okay? North up here is Gondor, and if you kept going way, way far south down here, you would eventually get to Harad, which leads to off Tolkien's map. So we're told. Behind them lay the road to the Morannon. Before them it ran out against, again upon its long journey south. To their right, the road from Osgiliath came climbing up and crossing, passed out eastward into darkness. The fourth way, the road they were to take. That is this one. Okay? Standing there for a moment, filled with dread, Frodo became aware that a light was shining. And I'm gonna read just about this entire passage because Tolkien puts it there for a reason. He saw it glowing on Sam's face beside him. So he stands there. He's suddenly aware there's a bright light. He notices Sam has this glow. Turning towards it, the direction the light is coming from, he saw beyond an arch of boughs the road to Osgiliath running almost as straight as a stretched ribbon down into the west. There, far away beyond Sad Gondor now overwhelmed in shade, the sun was sinking. Sorry, Gondor is this direction because they've been south of Gondor and have come back up a bit. The sun was sinking, finding at last the hem of the great slow rolling pall of cloud and falling in an ominous fire towards the yet unsullied sea. So there's dark clouds overhead, and the sun is dipped beneath the clouds, so that rays are now shining. And apparently it's like there's this long road lined by trees or something, and the light shines down this pathway. The brief glow fell upon a huge sitting figure, still and solemn as the great stone kings of Argonath. The years had gnawed it, violent hands had maimed it. Its head was gone, and in its place was set in mockery a round, rough-hewn stone, rudely painted by savage hands, in the likeness of a grinning face with one large red eye in the midst of its forehead. Okay? What's the red eye symbolic of? Sauron. What did Saruman's orcs have as their insignia? White hand. Okay? So, upon its knees and mighty chair and all about the pedestal were idle scrawls mixed with the foul symbols that the maggot folk of Mordor. So there is crude graffiti all over this partial statue. Right? Suddenly caught by the level beams, Frodo saw the old king's head. So the head's lying on the ground. It was lying rolled away by the roadside. Look, Sam. Look. The king has got a crown again. The light shines on this disembodied statue's head. The eyes were hollow and the carven beard was broken, but about the high stern forehead there was a coronal of silver and gold. A trailing plant with flowers like small white stars had bound itself across the brows as if in reverence for the fallen king. So there's, this head lying down, and a plant with white flowers has kind of woven itself around the forehead. So what's the gold from? The light of the sun. Okay? They cannot conquer forever. Who's the they? Evil, Sauron, darkness, the orcs, and then suddenly the brief glimpse was gone. And notice, black night fell. Notice, this isn't like if you go outside tonight, 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever time the sun sets. It's not like the sun dips below the horizon and the lights go out. It's pitch black. That is the description kind of here. They cannot conquer forever, and then it goes pitch black. What's that mean?
They might not be conquering forever.
But your time's up. Yeah. But you're going to die. Okay? Is that a hopeful thought? Is that a positive thought? Does that make you go, yay! I just can't wait for tomorrow? Not really. Okay? Chapter 8, Stairs of Cirith Ungol. So, they make their way up, and, we see a Black Rider flyer now. Passage goes seemingly for miles and miles, and we're going to go to page 711. Okay? They're thirsty. They hear a trickle of water, but they don't want to drink anything in this place. Right in the middle of 711. Sam says, we need to fill up our bottles. And Frodo says, yeah, but Faramir said, don't fill up any water flowing out of Imlid Morgul. We are not in that valley now, and if we came in a spring, it would be flowing into it, not out of it. Sam, I wouldn't trust it. That is, notwithstanding what Faramir says, if there's water, I'm not going to drink this water. Okay? A queer kind of a smell, stuffy. I don't like it, Sam says. Frodo, I don't like anything here, Sam. Where are they? I mean, are they walking up a staircase on the outside of a mountain? No, this is a big tunnel carved up in the middle. I don't like anything here at all. Step or stone, breath or bone, earth, air, and water all seem accursed. But so our path is laid. Remember when they first started with Gollum, after they get him tamed and they get ready to start heading towards the dead marshes, Frodo says, "How shall we shape our path, Gollum?" He's looking at the fins and he's thinking, is it kind of a 2 steps over here, kind of thing to get across. Now he says, we can't turn to the right or left. This is the only way we can go. Fate? Destiny? Sam, yes, that's so. You're right, Mr. Frodo. And we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. What does he mean?
If they had known what they were going to have to do, they probably wouldn't have been able to do it.
I'm going to quibble. What do you mean by wouldn't have been able to do it?
I don't think they would have been able to, if they had known where they were going, the journey to get there would have been much harder.
Okay. Back up even further. What is Sam really getting at?
Maybe they should have left the Shire.
If we knew we would be right here, back in that June day in the Shire, when we were talking to Gandalf, when you were talking to Gandalf and I was eavesdropping, we never would have left, he's saying. Why? Because this sucks, man. This does not look good. He's kind of looking at, the stone head, light for a moment, and then utter darkness, and he's, that's going to be us. Okay? Notice, we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. If we had more information. When I teach an intro to lit course, and I do Greek tragedy, I give as kind of as my definition, maybe wrong, of Greek tragedy, is that the tragic hero has always got to make a choice. And in fact, it applies to Shakespearean tragedy too. The tragic hero has always got to make a choice when he or she doesn't have enough information to make the choice on. Doesn't have the information to make a proper decision. Oedipus the King. How many of you have heard of that play or read that play before? Anybody? A couple of you. It's about a guy who finds out. It's about a guy who, when his parents are pregnant, his mother is pregnant with him, receives a prophecy. The child in your womb is fated to kill your husband, marry you, and bring children into the world by you. So his children will be his siblings. Incest, right? And they're like, ew, no. Right? So when he's born, they have his legs pinned together, literally, a nail driven through both legs at the ankles, and leave him on a mountain. He gets picked up, taken to another town, is raised by the king and queen of that town, of that country, okay? And at a party that they're throwing, a drunk says, you're going to kill your father. And he's kind of in trouble with that. He asks his parents, don't worry, he was just a drunk. He didn't know what he's talking about. But he can't put it out of his mind. So he goes to the same oracle, okay, that gave the prophecy to his real parents the first time, and the oracle tells him, you are fated to kill your father, sleep with your mother, and raise, this horrid brood to the world. And he's like, ew, no, and runs away. He loves his mother and father. He doesn't want to do those things. He runs away, and in running away, he kills his father, becomes king of the city that his father was king of. Becoming king of the city means the queen is now his. He's just made fate happen. Why? Because he didn't know his parents weren't his parents. He didn't know he was adopted. If he'd known he was adopted, he could have stayed there and lived happily ever after. Okay? Sam is saying, if we'd known everything, if Gandalf had laid out how everything would have happened, we wouldn't be here. What's the problem with that? Gandalf didn't know how everything was going to happen. As far as they know, Gandalf's what?
Yeah.
He's still dead, okay? But I suppose it's often that way. The brave things in the old tales and songs, Mr. Frodo, adventures as I used to call them. And we're going to get a long passage where Sam plays literary critic, literary theorist, how stories work. I think it's one of the most amazing and important parts in the entire novel. I used to think, notice, used to, that there were things the wonderful folk of the stories went out and looked for because they wanted them, because they were exciting and life was a bit dull, a kind of a sport, as you might say. But that's not the way of it with the tales that really mattered, or the ones that stay in the mind. Okay? So he's going to tell us how the tales that really mattered, or the ones that stay in the mind, really worked. Folks seem to have been just landed in them, usually. Their paths were laid that way, as you put it. But I expect they had lots of chances, like us, of turning back. Only they didn't. Where could Frodo and Sam have turned back? And Merry Pippin?
Rivendell.
Rivendell, here's the ring. Your problem now, just a little short hobbit going back home, gonna drink and smoke until I die, He says they could have turned back, but they didn't in those stories. We hear about those, and if they had turned back, we shouldn't know because they'd have been forgotten. What do they mean?
They wouldn't have a story if there was no story to tell.
There wouldn't be a story if they hadn't gone on. I think Beowulf is a perfect example. Beowulf fits the opening part of what Sam said. Somebody who goes off because he's a little bored. The character Beowulf in the Old English poem goes off to fight Grendel because he hears Grendel is terrorizing the Danes. It's not his fight. He makes it his fight, right? In the latter part of his life, he's just sitting around being king. He has 50 years of peace. Nobody's troubling him. Why? Because he's Beowulf. He's known as a monster killer. Nobody wants to bring a fight to him. Until a dragon comes in one day. And Beowulf tells his men, I've got to be the one to fight the dragon. Why? Monster killer. You guys aren't. There's another reason that no critics ever talk about. None of his men have fought. Because he's had a peaceful reign for 50 years. They might have done war games among themselves, like a scrimmage in an athletic contest, but they've never actually had to go out and fight. And they're going to fight a dragon? Yeah, right. Okay? So, he says, they had an opportunity to turn back, but they didn't. And if they had turned back, we wouldn't know because they'd have been forgotten. Think of the example I used in class a week or so ago of 9/11, Flight 93. Flight 93? Whatever the flight was that went down in Pennsylvania. We wouldn't know anything about those guys that rushed the hijackers and made the plane go down. We wouldn't know anything about that if they hadn't done that. Why? Because if they hadn't done that, what would have happened to that plane? Odds are, thinking is, the Capitol would have been destroyed. Big white dome, middle of D.C., it would have flown right into it. Okay? We wouldn't know the names Todd Beamer or McMillan or any of those other guys at all. So, he says, we hear about those as just went on, and not all to a good end, mind you. What do you mean by good end? At least not to what folk inside a story and not outside it call a good end. Because if you're in the story, if you're Todd Beamer and those other guys on that plane, what's the good end for that story?
The crash.
What's a better end? You overcome the hijackers and get the plane to land safely. And everybody lives happily ever after. So notice, in the story, and not those outside it. Because those of us outside that story I would say, right, could be wrong. They did have a good ending. It's not a good ending for Lisa Beamer and her daughter, I think, because her son or her husband died in the process. Pretty sure she's remarried and has 2 or 3 other kids. Okay? You know, and so he explains what he means by the good end idea. Coming home and finding things all right, though not quite the same, like old Mr. Bilbo. We could literally stop right here and turn to the very last page. Because at the very last, should I give it up? Yeah, because we have to anyways. At the very last page, Sam comes home. He walks up Bagshot Road, and there's his wife waiting for him, Rosie, waiting for him at the door, with the door open, firelight streaming out the door. It's warm and inviting. She welcomes him in. She sits him down on his, lazy boy recliner, puts his daughter in his lap. Happily ever after. It's not happily ever after necessarily for some other folks. So, but those aren't always the best tales to hear. Though they may be the best tales to get landed in. If you've not finished The Lord of the Rings, sorry, I'm going to give away something else. That's not the tale Frodo gets landed in. Frodo doesn't get that happy ending. He gets a different happy ending, but he doesn't get the one that, most people in this world, he doesn't get the Disney happy ending. Sam gets the Disney happy ending. Tolkien hated Disney, by the way. He thought what Disney did to fairy tales, just, like capital crime, he deserved hanging. Okay? I wonder what sort of tale we've fallen into. What kind of story are we in, Mr. Frodo? Sam is asking. Frodo, I wonder, but I don't know. And that's the way of a real tale. You don't know. Go back to that flight on 9/11. I'll bet at least in most of those guys' minds who rushed the cockpit and rushed the hijackers, I'll bet some of them thought, we might be able to pull this off and still live. If we can get to them before the plane crashes, we might be able to make it out of here alive. But you don't know. And that's the way of a real tale. Why? Because a real tale, according to Frodo, according to Sam, according to Tolkien, is like real life. Take any one that you're fond of. You may know or guess what kind of a tale it is, happy ending or sad ending, but the people in it don't know. And you don't want them to know. See, the thing about Oedipus the King, it's full of what's called dramatic irony. Because Sophocles' audience, he wrote it in the 5th century BC, Sophocles' audience knew the story of Oedipus. It was a myth. They knew this guy was fated to kill his father, sleep with his mother, and such. So when the play starts and Oedipus finds out, he's got to rid the city of the pollution, and the pollution is the killer of the previous king, he starts calling down fire and brimstone on the murderer. And the audience is just sitting there going, oh my God, he's going to get it. Because they know he's the murderer, right? And he just keeps lathering it on, right? In fact, at one point he even says, and if I don't find the murderer, let all these sentences fall on me. Okay? He doesn't know. And you don't want them to. Why don't you want them to? Why don't you want somebody in a really good story? Why don't you want Harry Potter to find out in book 1 what he must do in book 7? For those of you who are familiar with the stories. Don't give anything away. Because do you think he would go on through the end of book 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I don't know.
Or just go, just do it now. Let's just cut to the chase. Sam. No, sir, of course you don't want that to happen. Baron, let's talk about Baron. We've heard a little bit about Baron back at Weathertop. Baron now, he never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown in Thangorodrim. This is published in 1954. People who want to know what the hell he's talking about had to wait till 1977 until they could read The Tale of Beren and Luthien and find out exactly what happens. And yet he did. Now, Sam, I think, is reading a little bit into it. Because Beren, in that tale, Beren doesn't go, this will never work, I'm never going to succeed, I'm going to fail, I'll never marry Luthien, but I'm going to go on and try, And that was a worse place in Blacker than ours, which is true. Because, I keep facetiously calling Mordor hell. No. Mordor's like the front porch to hell. Compared to Morgoth's domain of Thangorodrim. But that's a long tale, of course, and goes on past the happiness and into grief and beyond it. In the Silmaril he cut from the crown that became a family heirloom that Eärendil took and came to Eärendil. And Sam has his slapped upside the head with a 2x4 moment. I never thought of that before. You've got some of the light in it. In that star glass, that the light, we're in the same tale. The Silmaril that is now with Eärendil up in the sky, its light is what fills that little phial, that little glass jar that Frodo wears around his neck. And notice the connection Sam has just made. That tale is still going on. Different chapters, maybe different volumes. Maybe we're not in book 5, we're now in book 6. Don't the great tales never end? Frodo, no, they never end as tales, but the people in them come and go when their parts ended. Tolkien says, at the end, the conclusion of the fairy story essay, in the epilogue, this is in the published version. I've not been able to find out if this epilogue was in the orally delivered lecture in 1938, because we don't have the written or typescript that he delivered that lecture from. Okay? All we have is the earliest published form, and that's in 1947, and it is there. Okay? Tolkien says in the epilogue, he connects fairy stories with what he calls the fairy story, the story of the gospel, the incarnation of Christ. And he does that for one reason. Part of that one reason is he's Catholic, okay? But it's also because Tolkien is suggesting all fairy stories, all true tales are connected to that one tale. They're all like tributaries to it. And I think he does that for a couple of reasons. At least one of which is this. He's connecting this and all the individual tales that make up the Silmarillion with that one great story. Why? Because he wants this to be redeemed. He wants this to be true in a kind of a grand cosmic sense. Not in the sense that there was really a guy named Aragorn and he was really a future king, or there was really a race of beings called hobbits. Not in that sense, okay? Frodo, our part will end later was or sooner. Why does he add the or sooner?
He doesn't know where his fate is.
Somebody said something over here first. They don't know where the road is taking them. Okay. What did you say?
They said that
They don't know where their fate's going. But that's location. Later or sooner implies what?
They're gonna die.
Yeah, we're going to die. See, Frodo's mentality is already darkening. Okay? So, they keep going. Page 713. Now we're going to move along a bit quicker. Sam's still thinking story. And he's thinking Frodo, hero. Sam, his trusty sidekick. What about Gollum? How's Gollum in a story? Page 713. Why, even Gollum might be good in a tale. I mean, better than he is to have by you anyways. I wonder if he thinks he's the hero or the villain. And he calls. And Gollum's not there. Bottom of 713. Frodo. I don't think he's got just one plain scheme in his muddled head, talking about Gollum. I think he really is, in part, trying to save the precious from the enemy as long as he can. Why? Because that would be the last disaster for him, too. So, Sam and Frodo fall asleep. Sam says, you go to sleep, Mr. Frodo, I'll keep watch. So Sam sits down on his butt on the floor, leaning against the wall. Frodo lies down beside him, puts his head in Sam's lap. Sam puts one hand on his head, one hand on his back. Why? If Frodo moves, he's going to know. I mean, there's no way Frodo's leaving. All right? 7:14. This is a key passage. And so Gollum found them hours later when he returned, crawling and creeping down the path out of the gloom ahead. Sam sat propped against the stone, his head dropping sideways, his breathing heavy. In his lap lay Frodo's head, drowned deep in sleep. Upon his white forehead lay one of Sam's brown hands, and the other lay softly upon his master's breast. Peace was in both their faces. Gollum looked at them. Strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away. He looks back up from the direction he came, shakes his head as if engaged in some interior debate. Now, in Western culture, shaking your head means what?
No.
No. Stop. Not good. He looks back up, shakes his head no. Then he came back and slowly put out a trembling hand. Very cautiously, he does what? He touches Frodo's knee. Why the knee? Remember what I talked about the other day? Respect, reverence, supplication, begging for mercy. Okay. Sam saw earlier, back before Gollum was tamed, in the taming process, Gollum fawns on Frodo's knees, like he sits there and paws at them. Right? But almost the touch, notice, was a caress. What's the difference between just reaching out and doing that and reaching out and doing that?
Not as gentle as the other.
Caress would be more gentle. A caress would be an act of kindness, an act of love almost. For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought. Notice the narrator is telling us this is what they would have seen. That they beheld an old, weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, in the fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing. So, having that part of the narration now, and seeing Gollum reach out and almost caress Frodo. What are we seeing? What is happening? What is this depicting?
We're seeing Smeagol as sort of the forefront.
Keep going. Definitely right.
He's showing that we're seeing the good and evil battle that's going on in him, and at this point, the good is winning.
Keep going. You're right. Go ahead.
We're seeing more signs that he's being closer and closer to being potentially redeemed.
Yeah, really close. When Gollum reaches, okay, we have two hobbits, right? And then we see this old, weary, pitiable hobbit. This is this idea of fellowship, of community, of the restoration of identity. What did Frodo say initially when he heard about Gollum? He can't, no, he can't be. Yes, he can. And what happens? But at that touch, Frodo stirred and cried out, softly in his sleep. He doesn't go, oh, don't touch me. No, it's just, it startles him. And, oh! And immediately Sam was wide awake. The first thing he saw was Gollum, notice, pawing at his master, as he thought. He doesn't see Gollum caressing. Why?
Because Sam thinks evil of Gollum.
Louder?
Sam thinks evil of Gollum.
Sam thinks evil of Gollum. He thinks no matter what, Gollum is only going to do evil. So notice how thought does what?
Change your persona on someone
Okay,
or action.
it determines perception. How you think about something determines how you see that thing. Okay? Hey you, what are you up to? Notice he says this roughly. Gollum. Nothing, said Gollum softly. If Gollum were a cat, his hackles aren't up. You know, the back isn't arched, the fur isn't sticking out. Nice master. Is he saying nice master to Sam? Or is he saying nice master to Frodo? Sam's not his master, Frodo is. I dare say. Where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain. Gollum, I love this, just genius on Tolkien's part, withdrew himself, and a green glint flickered under his heavy eyelids. He withdrew himself. What's the himself?
The good part.
Smeagol is pulled back. And we see the green glinting in the eyes. Almost spider-like he looked now. What's a spider do if you get too close to it? If it's a smart spider, it pulls back. Okay? We're going to see in one of the Harry Potter books. Couple spiders are going to see something happen to other spiders, and the third spider is going to go, no, before it gets zapped. Okay? The fleeting moment had passed beyond recall. Sneaking. Hobbits always so polite. Yeah, so nice. Hobbits. Smeagol brings them up secret ways nobody else can find. Tired he is. Thirsty. Yeah, thirsty. And he guides them and searches for paths, and they say, snake. Notice, they say. Frodo hasn't said any of this. Sam has. Very nice friends only, ain't my precious. Sam felt a bit remorseful, though not more trustful. What's the problem with Sam feeling a bit remorseful at this point?
That means Gollum has an easy way.
Okay, what else?
He's going to be less likely to, in the future, instantly assume the worst.
Possibly. It's more basic than that. It's too late at this point. Okay? Sam, at this point, kind of, probably too strong, but I'll say it anyways, kind of creates the Gollum that we are left with. It's Sam's actions that cause Gollum to withdraw. Notice, if Gollum is withdrawing, then what was he before he withdrew? He was all out there. He was vulnerable. This is like, it's an analogy, folks. It's not the same. This is like, will you marry me? Because what can happen at that point?
Reject or accept.
You could be rejected or accepted. Accepted would be the good one. Rejected would be the bad one. I don't know. Let me think about it a while. That's not a good answer either. It's, yay or nay. Either give me bliss or kill me now. It's one of those two kind of things. Sam does the kill me now. So that Gollum's actions, kind of from this point on, he's become almost like a robot. Almost. Because we're going to see one slight little change towards the end. Okay. So, they go on, chapter 9, Shelob's Lair, which we're going to skip most of. They get attacked. They find out, the tunnel has these big, what feel like ropes, and they're described as being rather thick. And then they realize they're spider webs, and they see the eyes. They see Shelob. 7:20. Sam calls out to Frodo, the star glass, the lady's gift. Frodo, yes, I'd forgotten it. Okay. He pulls it out. That's when they see, Shelob. 7:21. Frodo cries out, Galadriel. The light, comes out even stronger. Frodo runs on. Frodo gets attacked. And chapter 10. The choices of Master Samwise. Frodo's lying face upward on the ground. The monster was bending over him, so intent upon her victim, she took no heed of Sam and his cries until he was close at hand. And Sam does what? He runs, and it's almost like, I don't remember the exact description, it's almost like he stands over Frodo, and he's got Sting, and he's like, come on. Shelob lowers her body down, big stinking spider. Okay? Think of, with the legs, size of this room. So if you don't like spiders, just let that, sit and perk for a while in your brain. And Sam stands there like this. She lowers, Sam stabs, she gets a pain she's never had, she goes off, and there's Frodo. Where has Sam seen this? Mirror of Galadriel. He saw Frodo bound in a tunnel. Had no idea what it meant. Okay? And suddenly, 7:29, when Sam cries out, Gilthoniel Aelbereth, his tongue is loosened, we're told, or loosed. What that means is Sam can now speak something he'd never spoken before. Aelbereth Gilthoniel Menopalandario Lenalin Sidi in Gurithos Atironin Fanuelos, etc. And with that, he staggered to his feet, and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son, again. Notice we're told he didn't know that language. Why? Can he do that? Because he's got Sting and he's got the glass. Okay? So, he passes out. He wakes up, 7:31. What are Sam's choices? Why is the chapter titled The Choices of Master Samwise? What are his options at this point?
You can either stay and try to nurse Frodo back to health and risk being caught or Shelob coming back or any number of bad things, or
Okay.
he can take the ring himself and go on.
If Frodo's dead, which he thinks, the quest is ended, right? If he just stays there. Because eventually they'll get caught. His other option, take the ring and go on. And he's like, what? Me? Let me see if I can find it. 7:32. What? Me alone go to the crack of doom and all. Me take the ring from him. Council gave it to him. And then another part of it says, and the council gave him companions so that the errand should not fail. You were the last of all the company. The errand must not fail. What's the errand? Kill Sauron. Destroy the ring. I wish I wasn't the last. I wish old Gandalf was here or somebody. Why am I left all alone? In other words, we're back to Frodo, back at the beginning of the Shadow of the Past. Why me? Doesn't do any good asking that question. You haven't put yourself forward, he says. You've been put forward. If he's been put forward, then that implies what? There is a putter forwarder behind him, so to speak. Okay? And Sam says, I've got to make up my own mind, but I'm going to screw it up. His nickname, Samwise, the Sam part means half. Half-wise. So, IQ 89, 90, somewhere around that, a little bit below average. So Sam decides, go away. Stop ringing. So he takes it. And as soon as he takes the ring and the star glass and Sting, he starts going off and he hears voices. And what does he come to discover? Just before the end. Frodo's not dead. Shelob just stung him because she doesn't eat her prey dead. She likes, kicking a little bit, And now he's, what? Captured by orcs. And Sam is locked out. And we turn the page, and we're done with the Two Towers, and now we have to wait a year in the 1950s to find out what happens to Frodo and Sam. Because we know Frodo's alive. We get the Return of the King. It's finally on the bookshelf. We open it up. Book 5, Minas Tirith. Come on, Tolkien, quit jerking us around like this. Okay? So, Gandalf takes Pippin to Minas Tirith. They ride into Minas Tirith and such. 753. He says, we're going to go talk to Denethor. This is Boromir's father, steward of the city. Be careful, bottom of the page. Be careful of your words, Master Peregrine. This is no time for hobbit pertness. In other words, don't be a smartass. Theoden is a kindly old man. Denethor is a man of the sort, proud and subtle, blah, blah, blah. He loved his son. He loved him greatly, too much, perhaps. How can you love your child too much?
You put them over all others.
You put that child over all others? How else?
You protect them too much. You don't let them grow and learn to protect themselves.
Boromir's a warrior, though, so he wasn't probably overprotected. What else can you do?
You can inflate their ego too much. It makes them think that there's something special.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's definitely true with Boromir. You could put all your hopes in that child. Live vicariously through that child. Okay? So, he says, don't mention Aragorn. Why not? What's wrong with Strider? Okay. Gandalf. 754, top of the page. There's no time to instruct you now in the history of Gondor, though it might have been better if you'd learned some. Do as I bid is scarcely wise from bringing the news of the death of its heir to a mighty lord, to speak overmuch of the coming of one who will, if he comes, claim the kingship. Kingship? What are you talking about, Gandalf? If you have walked all these days with closed ears and mind asleep, wake up. Has he not heard or seen anything? He wasn't there with the riders of Rohan when Aragorn said, I'm Aragorn, son of, throws the cloak back and cue the special effects and all that kind of stuff. He didn't see that. He didn't see Aragorn at Helm's Deep. He didn't see Aragorn, that we're going to hear about in just a few moments, when Aragorn reveals himself to Sauron in the Palantir. Because when Sauron sees Aragorn in the Palantir, he doesn't see Strider of the North. He sees Isildur and Elendil in this man. He sees the future king. He sees the sword that cut his finger off. Okay? He sees what? Aragorn as Aragorn wants to be seen. And notice that, by the way. That means Aragorn controls what Sauron can see when looking into the Palantir. Why? Because he's the rightful heir of the Palantir. Sauron's more powerful, but Aragorn's the rightful heir. Okay? So, they go in, they talk, they sit down in front of Denethor, bottom of 755. Okay? Denethor mentions when they heard the horn, and Pippin kind of works out the time. He says that was 13 days ago. Okay? And Denethor's like, so how come you're alive and my son is dead? This doesn't make sense. Pippin, mightiest man may be slain by one arrow. Boromir was pierced by many. When last I saw him, he sank beside a tree and plucked a black feathered shaft from his side. I swooned and was made captive. And then what does he do? Pippin does the most grown-up thing he's ever done. He goes to Denethor and he says, little service, no doubt, will so great a lord of men think to find in a hobbit, a halfling from the northern shire. Yet such as it is, I will offer it in payment of my debt. I owe you because your son died for me. And he pulls aside his cloak, and he pulls his little sword out, and he puts it at Denethor's feet, an act of homage. A pale smile like a gleam of cold sun on a winter's evening passed over the old man's face. My wife and I just rewatched the Hunger Games trilogy, and I can't help but think Donald Sutherland would make a great Denethor. Okay? And so he looks at it and says, I kind of recognize this sword. This goes way back to the men of... Shut up, Siri. Goes back to the men of Westerness and such. Okay? So Gandalf's like, you sure? You sure you want to? Yes, I am. Take the hilt. Say what he says. And so Pippin swears fealty to the Steward of Gondor. And via the Steward of Gondor, to the King of Gondor, should the king return. What's Denethor's first command? Tell me everything you know. Okay? So, 757, right in the middle of the page. Pippin's sitting there. Here's Gandalf. Here's Denethor. They're staring at each other. We used to call this something when I was growing up in California, but I can't say it anymore because it's deemed racist. Anyways, Pippin looks at them. Denethor looked indeed much more like a great wizard than Gandalf did, more kingly, beautiful, and powerful, and older. Yet by a sense other than sight, Pippin perceived that Gandalf had the greater power and the deeper wisdom, and a majesty that was veiled. And he was older, far older, and he wonders, how old is Gandalf? And then he thinks, I never thought about this. Treebeard had said something about wizards, but even then, he had not thought of Gandalf as one of them. What was Gandalf? That is, what is a wizard? In what far time and place did he come into the world, and when would he leave it? And then he sees that Denethor and Gandalf still looked each other in the eye, as if reading the other's mind, but it was Denethor who first withdrew his gaze. Why? What does Denethor not have that Gandalf does?
Hope.
Hope? I mean, that's true. That comes out later. He doesn't have the strength of will and purpose that Gandalf has. Gandalf's like, okay, you want to sit here and play this staring game? I can do this all day. He's like Steve Rogers getting beat up. Just, come on. And Denethor averts his gaze because he can't handle this. Okay? Denethor, yea, for though the stones be lost, they say, still the lords of Gondor have keener sight than lesser men. So, chairs brought in, food, Pippin and Denethor talk. And then Gandalf speaks, 758. Okay? And Gandalf's like, here you've been questioning the midget all this time. Meanwhile, I'm here. You know I know more than he does. Okay? he says, Denethor says to Gandalf, let your wrath and an old man's folly run off, and then return to my comfort. Folly? Never said that. When you are a dotard, you will die. That is, when you have Alzheimer's. You can use even your grief as a cloak. Do you think I do not understand your purpose in questioning for an hour one who knows the least while I sit by? Pippin doesn't hear that, by the way. Or if he does, he doesn't understand what Gandalf just said. If you understand it, then be content. Okay? Notice, Denethor speaks himself in the third person. The Lord of Gondor is not to be made the tool of other men's purposes, however worthy. And to him there is no purpose higher in the world as it now stands than the good of Gondor and the rule of Gondor. My lord is mine and no other man's, unless the king return. So what's he just told us? Let's bring this into our world. Okay? And let's say Denethor is the president. The president has just said, the rule of the United States is my concern. And that's pretty much it. I don't care about Europe. I don't care about Asia. I don't care about South America. I don't care about Africa. Let them go to hell. All I'm concerned about is America, United States, not even Canada. I know it's connected, but it doesn't count. All right? And the rule of Gondor is mine. The rule of the United States is mine, unless the king returns. Okay, unless the king should return again, says Gandalf. Well, my lord steward, since you used the word, I'm going to use it back to you. It is your task to keep some kingdom still against that event. Okay? You've got to maintain even a small portion of that. In that task, you shall have all the aid you are pleased. I will help you. That's my task too. But I will say this. The rule of no realm is mine, neither Gondor nor any other. Okay? So, I don't rule any place, neither Gondor nor any other land. But all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. Well, what does that include? Gondor, Lorien, Rivendell, Ithilien, the Shire, the lonely mountain where the dwarves live. Anything, he says, that is of worth is my care. Okay? And for my part, I shall not wholly fail of my task, even if Gondor should perish. Let's say Gondor gets nuked, wiped off the face of the earth. Gandalf says, I will not have entirely failed. If anything passes through this night that can still grow fair or bear fruit and flower again in days to come. If there is one daylily that will bloom tomorrow or in a week, I will not have failed. For I also am a steward. Did you not know? What is Gandalf's stewardship? All of Middle-earth. So here's Gondor. And this is, Denethor's stewardship. And this is Gandalf's. It's like, don't talk to me about, your little piddling country. Okay? So, they go on. Pippin's made, a house guard. He's dressed in the livery of Minas Tirith. He meets Baragond and Beowulf. Chapter 2, Passing of the Grey Company. Okay? Merry doesn't want to get left behind. I'm going to skip a bunch. Riders from the north show up, and they have some things for Aragorn. Aragorn says, don't show him. I know what it is. Okay? 777, Merry is given armor, mail, and such, and Theoden kind of adopts him, and Merry swears fealty to Theoden. So now we have Pippin, a knight, so to speak, of Gondor, and Merry, a knight of Rohan. All right? 778-79, Aragorn tells the others where he has to go. He said, none of you have to come with me. He's got to take the paths of the dead. Theoden, top of 779. Why do you speak of them? Aylmer, alas, Aragorn, my friend, I hope to ride with you, but I'm not going there. Okay? Aragorn, my doom takes me here. It's kind of like, this is how my path is laid. All right? Merry stays with Theoden. Legolas and Gimli say, we will go with you. Okay? 780. Aragorn tells Legolas and Gimli he looked in the Palantir. Gimli's like, man, Gandalf warned you not to do that. Aragorn's, you forget who you're talking to. Another smack. What do you fear I should say to him? Did I openly proclaim my title before the doors of Aedoras? Nay, Gimli. He says, I'm the lawful master of the stone, and I had both the right and the strength to use it. It was a bitter struggle, and the weariness is slow to pass. I spoke no word to him. In the end, I wrenched the stone to my own will. Yes, that alone he will find hard to endure, and he beheld me. Yes, Gimli, he saw me, but not like you see me now. You know, Prince Charles used to go around all the time just in a nice suit. Now, last week and a half, just about every time you saw King Charles, chest is decked out with medals and all the paraphernalia. I mean, if the Queen's funeral showed nothing, it's, man, do the Brits know how to do pageantry better than anybody else in the world. And it all goes back hundreds of years, okay? Aragorn's kind of suggesting, I showed him as I will be as king. It's almost like, you know, with the orb, the crown, the sword, ready to rule, okay? So, page 781, we get the little prophecy about the paths of the dead that he says I have to go through. And why? Why are the dead not at peace in the paths of the dead? It's on page 782. They broke an oath. They promised to fight for Isildur, and they didn't. So they are held to their oath of not being at peace until they fulfill that oath. Okay? So he says, being the heir of Isildur, I can go through and kind of call them to their oath. 783. Eowyn comes up to him and says, what? Because he says, tomorrow I ride through the paths of the dead. She stared at him as one that is stricken, her face blanched, right in the middle of the page. And for long she spoke no more, while all sat silent. But Aragorn, is it then your errand to seek death? That is all you're going to find there. They don't suffer any living to pass, he says. They may suffer me. He says, but I will adventure it. Why? No other road will serve. This is madness. You're a man. You're a man. What a waste, you know. But he's also a great captain, a great warrior. What a waste. She's operating on both those levels, by the way. Okay? Aragorn says, it is not madness, lady, for I go on a path appointed. Those who follow me do so of their free will. Like the Battle of Malden that I mentioned, Beardnoth's followers go into that battle because of their love for him. Beardnoth is the idiot. He makes the bad military decision. She's kind of suggesting, you're going to lead them all to their death. You're going to be another, Beardnoth. Okay? So, what does she want? She wants to go with them. Okay? 784. Aragorn says, I have to go on this. It's the only way I can have a real effect in the battle against Sauron. Okay? She says, let me go with you. If you must go, let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril in battle. Aragorn, your duty is with your people. Too often, you men speak to me of duty. What does she mean? Shut up.
She's sick and tired of being told that she's just a woman to watch the children in the village.
Exactly. Okay? But back up for just a moment. Look at what she says. Am I not of the house of Earl, a shield maiden and a drye nurse? Not a drye nurse, sorry. I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Since they falter no longer, she's talking about her uncle, Theoden. He's no longer faltering. He's sound of mind, firm in body, you know. It seems, may I not now spend my life as I will? What does she mean by spend?
Go to die if I want to.
Okay, literally. What does she mean by spend? What do you do when you spend money? You lose it. You give it away. You want something else in return. She's saying, may I not now give away my life? Aragorn, few may do that with honor. Because he sees what she really means. Can't I march off into battle knowing I will die? Well, that's what? Suicide. That's suicide. It's like the person who antagonizes a cop. And the cop says, put the weapon down, put the weapon down, put the weapon down, and the person charges. Often we find out that is suicide by cop. It's a phrase that's only been around for about the last 10 or 20 years. People who are suicidal, but who can't pull the trigger themselves, they get somebody else to. Okay? So, he says, did you not accept the charge to govern these people until their Lord's return? The answer is yes, she did. The question is, could she have said no? Yes, she could have. She could have said, no, my lord, I don't want to watch over the women and children and the infirm and the lame and the old and the weary and your huddled masses and all that. So, it's kind of a rhetorical question. If you had not been chosen, then some marshal or captain would have been set in the same place. And guess what? He could not ride away from his charge. Were he weary of it or no? Because if he rode away from the charge, if you ride away from her charge, then what does she become?
Deserter.
A deserter. And you get that passage in the fairy story essay about the flight of the deserter versus the flight of the prisoner. She wants to escape, but not in the right way. Okay? Shall I always be chosen? Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart, to mind the house while they win renown, and find food and beds when they return? In other words, you're saying because I'm a woman, I've got to be the one to make sure the house looks good so that when the guys all return, they have food and lodging. Look at Aragorn's response. Notice, while they win renown, by the way, glory, a time may come soon when none will return. So if none return, what's going to happen to the people left behind? Then there will be need of valor without renown. Bravery without what? Glory. Without tales being told. Without legends and stories. For none shall remember the deeds that are done in the last defense of your homes. And we're almost back with Frodo and Sam at Cirith Ungol talking about stories. Because in that kind of story, what are we left with? No story. You wouldn't hear about the great final battle pitched by Éowyn against the invaders. Why? Because the invaders would win. Yet the deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised. So now, Aragorn, she says the thing about the riders going off and winning renown. He kind of latches on that. Why? Because he understands her psychology. He understands what is motivating Éowyn. All your words are but to say, you are a woman, your part is in the house. When the men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more. Is that what he means? That's not what Aragorn is saying. but I'm of the house of Earl and no serving woman. What did Gandalf offer to Saruman? Freedom for what? Be of service. She's saying, hell no. I don't want to serve. I can ride and wield blade, and I don't fear pain or... Well, okay, what do you fear? A cage. She's read her Maya Angelou, I know how the cage bird sings. To stay behind bars until use and old age accept them. A chance of doing great things is gone beyond recall or desire. He says, and yet you counseled me not to go on this adventure because it's perilous. So may one counsel another. I do not bid you to flee from peril, only to ride to battle where your sword may win renown and victory. Notice which one she puts first. Glory. Glory in battle. The very idea that throughout the entire novel, Tolkien decimates. This idea that some glory that you win in battle is going to be the thing by which you are known. I would not say a thing that is high and excellent cast away needlessly. Aragorn, you right. I mean, Eowyn, you're hot. That's kind of what he's saying. What a waste. Okay? Stay. Okay? So, we'll pick up chapter 3. Finish Return of the King, if you haven't already, by Thursday. We're gonna move fast. We're definitely gonna finish it by a week from today. We'll be done with Lord of the Rings. Okay? I know, sounds absolutely ludicrous, but it is coming to an end. And if you have finished it and haven't started Harry Potter and haven't read Harry Potter, start. They're a whole lot easier to read than Tolkien.